I'm Dimitri. I'm IAB Europe's data analyst and sustainability manager. I'm here today to talk to you a bit about our mapping of greenhouse gas estimation solutions that was published today. I'm going to give you a brief overview as well as some context, and then we'll dive right into the first panel, which is very exciting. So first of all, let's contextualize this deliverable in terms of its objectives. We had two main objectives here. Number one, to provide industry professionals with a reference tool so they're able to make informed decisions when it comes to their strategy and their greenhouse gas estimation and reduction. Different industry participants have different needs, different levels of resource allocation when it comes to sustainability, different levels of data readiness, for example. So we wanted to provide a tool that allows someone within the industry to navigate the range of emission models available and understand how they differ, why they may arrive at varying estimates, and ultimately which one is best for them. The second objective of this mapping was to uncover the main challenges in generating robust estimates for digital advertising products and essentially provide a basis for further development of these solutions, as well as collaborative industry level work to address these four main areas of focus. So today I'll be running you through a brief summary of the findings, as well as a brief summary of the gap analysis. And I invite everyone to go ahead and download the full report to look over when the first opportunity arises. Moving on to the next slide, which is essentially a description of the process behind the mapping's development. As a first step, the Sustainability Standards Committee decided that it wanted more work to be done to facilitate transparency when it comes to the various greenhouse gas models, and as well as understand where there may be key bottlenecks preventing them from a higher level of quality and accuracy. As a first step, we did a scoping exercise. We had proposals for included solutions that were shared by SSC members. Lauren, if you could please share that step. And then after that, there was discussion and approval of the factors across which these solutions would be mapped. I'll speak about those just in a second. Lauren, if we could have a couple more points. Then we had the first input window. We reached out to solution owners and presented them with an initial set of questions. We had meetings to discuss the specifics, and then we reviewed this first level of input. We refined the presentation of this data, and we had consensus within the framework and methodology working group for further RFIs. We reached back out to solution owners, and we added some additional clarifying questions just to complete the analysis. And then finally, we reviewed all of this material. We facilitated any last-minute additions to boost analysis coverage, and we got it ready to bring to the industry, which we are doing today. What solutions were included in this mapping? Our categorization in the Sustainability Standards Committee is as follows. Frameworks are broad, formalized sets of guidance, right? They are the overarching document that essentially describes how you are going to measure, report, and mitigate greenhouse gas emissions associated with specific activity. We find that oftentimes these frameworks include methodology, but methodology can also be entirely separate from a specific framework. Methodology refers to the specific organizational, operational, and analytic actions that are taken when measuring greenhouse gas emissions. It describes the steps that take you from a volume figure all the way to a greenhouse gas impact figure. And then finally, a model or estimator, or you may have heard the word calculator used for this, is a tool that accepts inputs that describe activity in the value chain and returns an estimate for the associated greenhouse gas footprint. These are essentially the final tools that are developed when you apply a specific framework and specific methodologies. So what you'll see in the mapping is that we have categorized all solutions in accordance with this dichotomy here, essentially describing whether they are broad frameworks, whether they have specific methodology, or whether they have applied a framework with some methodological adjustments, and also whether they include a final ready-to-use tool, which we describe as a model or estimator. A quick point here on the next slide about greenhouse gas estimators, just so we all are on the same page about what it is we're describing. Most, if not all, greenhouse gas models essentially do two things. They take a specific value that describes the volume of an activity in the supply chain. They use an estimator to then go from that to an energy figure that describes the energy consumption required to materialize that process. This is especially true for digital. We're mainly looking at electricity as an emission source. And then finally, we have a carbon equivalent that is obtained through some kind of greenhouse gas estimator, whether that be a database that describes power grid intensities, or whether that be first-party data provided in corporate emissions reports. So essentially, throughout this entire mapping, we are addressing a similar kind of tool when we're looking at greenhouse gas models. That enables us to understand where exactly variations may enter this analysis. Even a minor tweak to the set of assumptions, such as the location of the grid for its servers, can significantly alter the final results. Beyond that, we may also see differences in terms of boundaries, data, scope, as well as a myriad of other additions to a specific model, such as mapping out the supply chain in a proprietary manner. Therefore, to understand all of these tools and all the different offerings, we need to understand the specifics of these models, as well as the frameworks and methodologies they're based on. What questions did we ask for this mapping? First of all, we asked about supply chain scope, which stages in the digital advertising supply chain are covered, device life cycle to look at how the emissions that come from devices are accounted for, purpose, which is a pretty qualitative description of the use case, transparency, uncertainty, how the tool will be developed further, data integration, how adaptable the tool is to firms at various levels of sustainability advancement and data readiness, geographical flexibility, and finally, compliance orientation. Can the tool be used to enable compliance with non-financial disclosure regulation, and do we have any use cases? Jumping right into a brief summary of the participating organizations, I will say we are very thankful for the support of all these organizations, as well as, of course, the Sustainability Standards Committee, which is chaired both by Stefan and Artur. Without these organizations and the committee, we wouldn't have been able to materialize the analysis. As a brief sort of overview of these organizations, I will say they vary quite a bit. Lauren, if we could click a couple of times. We have IAB Europe corporate members here. We have organizations that are not corporate members. We also have, for example, advertising giants, and we also have startups. We have both campaign level estimation as well as specific processes in the supply chain that are covered by some of these solutions. We have pay to play or free of charge solutions, and we have some that are exclusive to digital channels and some that are omnichannel. But I will say that the common denominator between all of these organizations, actually it's two common denominators. A, that they're all driving a better understanding of digital's environmental footprint. Lauren, if we could get a click here, please. And second of all, that they're all facilitating transparency, and I think they should all be applauded for doing so. It is not always the most comfortable position for an organization to be required to share additional information about its offering, but all of these organizations were very helpful in getting the market to understand where they're offering. On the next slide, we see a brief section of the gap analysis that we've taken and showed you here, simply because I think it's pretty important in understanding how all these solutions are interconnected. I think this visualizes the trichotomy of framework, methodology, and model as well. This is essentially an overview of the participating organizations, and we also included a couple of verification solutions or measurement solutions that are integrated with these vendors. Right, now onto a brief summary of the results, mindful of time here. First of all, when it comes to supply chain and device lifecycle, the vast majority of solutions covered allocation and delivery. This includes programmatic and also consumer view, which is related to consumer devices and energy consumption. All solutions account for use-based emissions, so this is the electricity that is consumed by devices in order to be able to power them, but fewer solutions accounted for embodied emissions, including the carbon footprint associated with the manufacture, as well as the end of life of devices. This choice was made because most solution owners that followed the path indicated that their decision was based on how robust they consider LCA data to be. Obviously, in some cases, they've decided to opt for a shorter scope in the interest of better data quality. And that is the justification given when it comes to device lifecycle. Transparency and data integration is the next slide. Most of the included solutions were based on public or private frameworks, academic or private research, and in some cases we had some proprietary work backing them as well. Even though some solution owners are still unable to provide full documentation, I will say that every solution owner included in this report provided a detailed response to our questions and provided as good as a response as any other open source framework or methodology. So again, I think that deserves some commendation. It should be noted that after our initial RFI, multiple solution owners also released documentation showing some of the real impact that the development of this report had. Most solutions that are included in this report are adaptable and can support estimation based on varying degrees of granularity. This is really important, again, because in some cases, firms are able to allocate additional resource and facilitate additional data granularity for the greenhouse gas estimation. In some cases, this is not possible. And we really need a market environment that is holistic and inclusive of all these different firms when it comes to making progress on sustainability. Specifically in the mapping, you'll see whether our model parameters can be customized and whether default values are available in the cases where you can't facilitate additional granularity. And then quickly on geographical flexibility and compliance orientation, all solutions rely on regional emissions intensity figures. The reality is that some cases these are not available, leading us to a common global factor as a fallback method. And also, most solution owners indicated that their greenhouse gas estimates could potentially assist firms in meeting compliance requirements. In some cases, we actually have examples where this has occurred. Now, quickly on the gap analysis. There are four main areas of focus we identified here. First of all, data availability. Additional work is required to increase transparency and facilitate the exchange of data between value chain actors. Data that describes both activities associated with a specific campaign or digital media product, as well as the intensity of that activity. Second of all, methodological alignment. I think a standardized framework is likely to create consistency and ease comparisons, overall accelerating industry-wide progress. That is why we are very proud to be supporting the development of a cross-channel framework over at GARM. Accounting for uncertainty, we see that corporate emissions reports, LCA databases, and other sources such as academic work may not always offer information on how accurate the figures they present are, leaving a sort of gap here. We do have some stopgap solutions such as qualitative data assessments. And then finally, in terms of geographical discrepancies, we see that availability of data varies across regions, and also the applications of standards such as ads.txt varies, which creates an issue in terms of mapping out the supply chain and building a model that is consistent and harmonized across different regions. This is obviously a bit of an issue when it comes to firms that have global operations as well, but we are seeing progress, and most of the discrepancies lie outside Europe. I think that's a pretty brief summary. In terms of next steps, we do intend to iterate on this deliverable, expand its scope and coverage, as well as its depth, while keeping it accessible to industry professionals. We want to track how the industry is working to address the identified challenges and what other evolutions are occurring, looking at, for example, the availability of industry-wide standards in the near future. Any questions? Feel free to reach out, and please do download the full report for an actual in-depth dive into all these solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dimitris. I don't know if we have some direct questions, but so far I can see not. I think, yeah, it could be quite overwhelming to see these findings the first time, but we will discuss them very soon. But first of all, thank you, Lauren, also for the introduction to the State of Readiness report. For those interested in the details of the reports, you can find the links to download your copies in the chat box